The marble floor beneath your feet gleamed coldly as you entered the vast event hall, its ornate chandeliers casting fractured light like distant stars, indifferent to your presence. You knew you should have been celebrated here. Your wife's exclusive promotion party, a gathering of power and prestige where you expected to stand by her side. Instead, your name had been carefully erased from every invitation, an invisible wound inflicted with surgical precision. They thought the absence would go unnoticed, that the silence around your exclusion would soften the blow. But the room's opulence only amplified the sting, a crystal palace built on deception. You remembered the whispered rumors, the subtle shifts in tone when your name surfaced in hushed corners, alliances fraying behind painted smiles. The signal came through weeks ago, a cryptic message from a shadow within the company's inner circle, warning you to stay clear of tonight. The betrayal wasn't sudden, it was a slow erosion, a deliberate dismantling of your role and relevance. They believed your silence marked weakness, that you would accept the erasure without fight. But you knew better. You had watched as backdoor deals were brokered under the guise of champagne toasts, your future sold piece by piece to those who coveted your position. Outside, the party pulsed with life. A symphony of laughter, clinking glasses, and the rustle of silk dresses concealing sharpened intentions. You stood at the threshold, the sharp scent of perfume and ambition mixing in the air, feeling like a ghost haunting the celebration meant to exclude you. Your wife's smile, radiant and unyielding, was fixed on others. Her eyes never met yours. The boardroom lights flickered like they knew what was coming, shadows playing over her face as if to mock the fracture growing between you. This was no accident. It was war in velvet gloves, and tonight the first move had been made without your knowledge. You stepped back into the shadows, a witness to your own downfall disguised as a party. The silence around your absence was loud, the invisible gash raw and bleeding beneath the surface. You knew this was just the beginning, a prologue, to a game where power was currency and betrayal, the only true ally. The empire your wife built had cracks you were ready to expose, no matter the cost. The microphone trembled in your son's small hand, the gleaming spotlight shifting with his unexpected grasp, drawing every eye in the room to his innocent face. You knew he didn't understand the weight of what he was about to do, yet his tiny voice shattered the carefully constructed silence, weaving raw truths into the polished night. The signal came through, unmistakable and brutal, as the crowd froze beneath chandeliers that seemed to dim with dread. They thought the party was a victory lap, a place to bask in power and blind ambition. But your son's words cracked open the facade. Whispered names, secret deals, promises broken like fragile glass. The room's laughter died in midair, replaced by murmurs and gasps, the opulent walls closing in with the gravity of hidden betrayals. Your wife's smile faltered. The glittering mask slipped as all eyes turned towards the quiet boy exposing the empire's rotten core. You knew this moment would change everything, setting off a chain reaction no one could stop. The guests shifted uneasily, their conversations now fractured under the weight of revelation, while cameras caught the tremors of truth spreading like wildfire. You saw the faces you once trusted twist into masks of fear and calculation, the power games that ruled this world suddenly laid bare. Behind the velvet curtains, surveillance eyes blinked in digital silence, recording every faltering step of the night's unraveling. Your son's innocent act was the spark to a powder keg. Corporate war had just ignited. You stood at the edge, watching as your 6-year-old became the unwitting herald of reckoning, the bridge between silence and exposure. The boardroom lights flickered again, shadows dancing like ghosts in the corners of the room, as the empire began to fracture. You knew the battle was far from over. But this night marked the tipping point. The hidden war for power, once secret and silent, had erupted into the harsh glare of truth. The boardroom lights flickered like they knew what was coming, casting long shadows over faces twisted by greed and fear as you entered the heart of the Empire's command. You knew every corner was laced with whispered secrets and unseen cameras, silent witnesses to the conspiracies that had dismantled your world. Behind the polished oak doors, deals were struck in whispers, loyalties bought and sold like currency, under the cold gaze of men and women who wore smiles as masks. They thought you were out of the game, a ghost fading from the power equation. But the signal came through. The intercepted emails, the encrypted voice calls, their backdoor deals, laid bare in digital shards. Your trusted allies had traded your future for shares and influence, weaving a web of corporate espionage that stretched to the highest echelons. The betrayal was recorded that night, a toast to your downfall immortalized in crystal glasses and sharp tongues. You had been their pawn, their sacrifice, while they ascended the throne you once claimed. You traced the lines of deceit, each contract a scar etched across the company's legacy. Each handshake a dagger aimed at your back. Surveillance footage revealed the true faces of those smiling at the party, the ones who whispered poison in boardroom shadows. You watched their panic as you laid your silent siege, knowing that the audit would be the blade that severed their stolen reign. The empire they built was a house of cards, fragile and corrupt, trembling under your gaze. The signal came again, sharper now, as you moved through the labyrinth of power, ready to ignite the final collapse. You held the key to their destruction, the proof they never expected you to find. The boardroom lights flickered once more, an ominous prelude to the reckoning, as you prepared to strike where it hurt most. The heart of their empire, where loyalty was a lie and power was the only truth. You knew the moment had come when the sterile silence of the audit room swallowed every breath, the fluorescent lights humming with cold precision as you unleashed the storm. Months of patient waiting, hidden in plain sight, had culminated in this relentless scrutiny of the ledgers and contracts they thought you'd never touch. The Empire's foundation began to tremble under the weight of the truth, as every falsified number, every concealed transaction surfaced like ghosts demanding justice. They thought the audit would pass unnoticed, their sins buried beneath layers of forged signatures and forged loyalty. But you held the power of exposure, a silent strike delivered with surgical precision. The signal came through again, an encrypted alert, a whisper of confirmation from a ghost identity you created to leak secret files and evidence. The betrayal was exposed in brutal clarity, the Empire's grand facade cracking as shareholders and media circled like vultures sensing blood. Your silence had been their undoing, their arrogance, your weapon. You watched the betrayer's world unravel, once the puppet master, now a fleeing figure chased by headlines and scandal. The corporate towers that gleamed with ill-gotten power darkened with the fall of their regime. You rose quietly from the ashes, the architect of their collapse, the storm they never saw coming. The empire they built with deceit was no more, and in its place, your reckoning stood tall, a monument to justice carved from betrayal and resilience. The boardroom lights flickered for the final time, shadows lengthening like the last breath of a dying beast. You stood victorious, the silent witness and executioner of karmic payback, knowing that power taken by treachery could only fall by the hand of truth. Your journey was far from over, but tonight marked the end of their reign and the beginning of your ascendance. The storm had passed, but the silence lingered like a heavy fog over the shattered skyline where glass towers once gleamed with ambition. Elevators no longer opened on command, their buttons frozen in quiet defiance. You stood alone amidst the ruins of an empire, the echoes of betrayal and power games now whispers carried on the wind. The corporate world that once thrummed with ruthless energy had slowed to a solemn pulse, a stillness that spoke of reckoning and finality. You watched the city breathe in this new calm, the streets emptied of the players who had danced their dangerous dance atop the throne of lies. The screens that once blasted headlines of scandal now flickered intermittently, as if uncertain of what to show next. Your wife's silhouette receded into the shadows, her empire crumbling in silence, a stark contrast to the storm you had become. The ghosts of secrets and espionage faded into quiet memories, the vendetta complete, the cost paid in full. You were no longer the outsider erased from the party, nor the silent victim of a ruthless game. You had become the unseen hand that tipped the scales, the reckoning behind the collapse. The city held its breath, suspended in this moment of quiet justice, a pause before the next inevitable battle. And in that stillness, you found a strange peace, a soft karmic wind down that whispered of endings and new beginnings. You were the storm once,